We're going to continue on with the atmospheric perspective that I had you watch videos about last week. Materials for this landscape are, first of all, your vine charcoal. I like these little tiny sticks for drawing. They help me get a skinny line, but there's these fatter sticks as well, and that's just really your personal preference. And I have 2 charcoal pencils I'm using. I love the soft ones. I like drawing with the soft ones, but I also have a medium because sometimes you want just a thinner, lighter line when you're sketching. And you can blend with your finger or a blending stump. These are also called tortillons. And I kind of like to work with the larger one if I have the option, because you can blend large areas with the end of it. And a kneaded eraser for pulling out lights. And a charcoal stick. So this is that very black charcoal stick for the dark areas that we were using in class. And then finally, if you need to sharpen your pencil, you can use a sheet of sandpaper at home if you don't have one of these sandpaper pads. Make sure your paper is taped down to a hard surface. Most of your drawing boards should be smooth, but if for some reason there's a weird texture underneath, you can just put a couple extra sheets of paper underneath your drawing paper that you taped down. I'm going to start my drawing in vine. So remember, vine is the one that you can just lift off almost completely with your finger. That's the very soft charcoal. And this is the reference photo I've emailed you guys. You can choose to work from this one or you can use one of your own. So first of all, I'm going to sketch in my mountain ranges. And I like to start with this range because it's pretty much right in the center of the paper. I can see this mountain starts just about 1/3 of the way across the paper horizontally. And then another 1/3 of the way over, we have the base of this mountain range where it runs into this dark hills in the front. And apparently my cat is gonna help out. I'm gonna sketch in the line of the hill where it comes in front of that little tree line. And then the clouds. So I'm just sketching in the biggest cloud shapes. I'm not worried about the little tiny ones. I don't want you to spend too long on this exercise. We don't have to get every little baby cloud in there. And I'm sketching lightly because I don't want to have a heavy outline around my clouds. Let's see, those need to come a little closer to one another. I'll just kind of rub out the vine with my finger. And then these very faint mountains in the background that we can barely see, I might just put a little gray value there. We're not gonna really draw those in. So we have our nice 3 layers of mountain ranges that we can see here. So that should be enough for my drawing. I guess I do want to put in the bottom of this cloud here. And we are ready to lay in some values. I'm gonna take my big chunk of vine and break it in half. And let's just see how that value compares to what's in the sky. So that gray there would probably be a nice value for the shadows and the clouds. So I think I can safely put my stick charcoal back here in the sky. So I'm using the side of my tool, and the sky is not going to be too dark, so I'm not using a ton of the stick back there. And another nice blending tool you can use is a chamois, C-H-A-M-O-I-S, and I believe it's a piece of sheepskin, if I'm not mistaken. And these are really great to blend with because they're soft and smooth. If you don't have a chamois, you can just use a paper towel, and these just give you a softer blend than the blending sticks, which are more for detail areas. Oh, that's right, I scooted that cloud over. So this will all be sky. And with my kneaded eraser, I'm just going to lift out that cloud edge. And there's a little cloud there and a little bit of sky underneath it. So I'll blend all that out, get a nice soft cloud tone in there. And when I blend more, it'll make it a little bit lighter. Now I want to lay down some value for the mountains. I think I'm going to try my vine for this mountain that's furthest back. And remember, with atmospheric perspective, just in terms of value, because we're working on a grayscale, when things get further away, when they move back into the distance, they are going to get lighter in value, and they're going to have less detail and softer edges. So this will be my lightest mountain range. And I do need to be careful while I blend with shaping the top edge here. But the bottom edge, I can be a little less careful because we're going to put darker value in front. And that's kind of nice. This particular board I'm using has a little more texture than I would like. I probably should have put some extra paper underneath, but it is creating an interesting surface on that mountain back there. So that actually worked out. And then the mountain just in front of it is going to be slightly darker. So I'm just going to do a light coat of my stick. And I'm missing a line in there. So there's that mountain, and I need one more line right in here defining this mountain edge. There we go. So this one's going to be slightly darker than this one, so I'm going to do a combination of the stick and the vine. And let's blend that. And I don't love this dark line that's being created at the top, but I will go back and fix that later. So right now we're just worried on big picture issues, and we'll come back in and deal with details later. And then again, just slightly darker in this mountain range. And this is creating our atmospheric perspective. And notice when I'm working this way how I'm jumping around to different areas of the picture. I'm not starting in one corner and working my way out and doing all the details from the get-go. And you will get little charcoal pieces that you can just blow off. Ideally, you're not scrubbing so hard with your stick charcoal that you're getting tons of dust, but you will get little pieces that occur. And then finally, these hills just behind the grassy field are the darkest that we have back there. So I'm going to use the most pressure on my charcoal stick. But these hills are not as dark as the trees in front of them. So I'm not pressing as hard as I possibly can. And with charcoal, it's better to get your values too light from the get-go than too dark, because it's a lot easier to add charcoal than it is to erase off. And you can see I'm starting to create a little value difference just with the way that I blend. There's a little bit of light catching that part of the hill. So when you're blending, you're not just smudging values around, you're actually shaping elements of your composition. So I'm just getting the dust off as I go. And when I blended, I lost the value difference between these two. So I'm gonna go back in with my soft charcoal pencil and sketch that back in. And because this hill has trees growing on it, it has a softer edge on the top of it. So I'm not going to draw a real hard outline. And I'm just going to bring a little value down from that so that it's not a black outline on the top. And this has a little bit of a harder edge right here. So I'm not going to put all my details into this area right now. I just wanted to make sure I could see each of the levels of mountains and hills. There's a little white line there where I didn't blend well, so I'll just brush that away. And let's see if I can flatten out this value just a little bit. So I'm pressing and pulling because I want that value to travel downwards. And then we have our foreground. The lightest parts of the foreground are actually these little yellow spots in the field. They look like maybe little clumps of flowers or where the light's hitting the tops of the grass. So I want to preserve areas of the foreground that are that light value. And to do so, I'm going to start with vine. I'm going to make my whole field that light yellow value to start off with, and I'll layer on my darks around those light areas. And I want to blend horizontally in this case because everything in the field, the layers of grass and plants and flowers and bushes are growing in a horizontal direction. So same thing with water, you want to blend horizontally. And in opposition to that, when I had this darker value at the top, I was trying to bring down over the hills, I was pulling that darker value towards me. We want to work with the largest shapes first and move into the smaller shapes. So I'm going to start with my big charcoal stick and just put in the biggest shadows that I see in the field. And if you look at the strokes I'm using to make those bush shadows, they're going horizontally, and then I'm doing a couple vertical strokes. And that's gonna give it a harder edge on the bottom and a softer edge on the top where those bushes move into the light. A little one over here, some larger ones at the bottom. And that's really it for the large ones, maybe a couple more there. And when I blend those, I want to think about there being a harder edge on the bottom, but it's not going to be the hardest edge. It's still kind of soft because bushes are soft. The leaves just kind of turn one into the other. So, for example, I'm not going to make a really hard outline at the bottom of the bush, because that's not something that we see in nature. It's going to be softer. So I'm just going to soften that up a little bit. And with my pencil, I can do little squiggles on the top that kind of mimic the clumps of leaves as they move into the light. So I just did kind of a quick general horizontal blend to start off with, and then with my pencil I can add more specific bushy shapes. And so our goal in creating a realistic picture is to get at least 3 values in every part of it, right? We want to have the light, the midtones, and the darks. So here's our darkest shadows. We have our lights that we're going to preserve just with that first layer. And then for midtones, we can go back into the background and use the pencil just to get a little variety in the grass. So in the foreground, these shapes are going to be larger. And of course they'll be smaller in the background. So back here we'll just have little shapes, many of them that are smaller and spaced closer together. And if you mess up at any point in your charcoal drawing, remember to not use the plastic eraser, the white one, unless you absolutely need to scrub an area out. You want to use your kneaded eraser, and to start off with, you know, there's a little funny mark there. Let's say I want to get rid of it. I'm going to shape my kneaded eraser into the shape of that area and just press and lift and see if it'll come out that way. So it looks like that was made with the charcoal stick. It's not really coming out, so I will try scrubbing it with my kneaded eraser, and that does lift it out. And then I can just blend back over that area and it's gone. So the kneaded eraser is your safest choice. The only way you would use the plastic is if, let's say I got a really dark line here that I didn't want with the charcoal stick, and pressing and lifting wasn't getting it up. That's when I would switch to my plastic eraser, because you can scrub with that and lift a lot more of the charcoal out. I can now create a harder edge at the bottom of these hills. And that's where my tree line is going to be. And there's a little slope here. And then there's actually a little patch of hill here that's a little bit lighter than what I have, so I'm just going to erase out with my kneaded eraser. And remember, if you get enough black on your kneaded eraser, you can actually use it as a blending tool. So now that I've collected a lot of charcoal dust on it, I'm going to blend that area a little bit. And I'm going to see if there's any areas here where I can go a little bit darker on this mountain. And as you can see, this mountain has a ton of little trees on it, which will make you go crazy if you try to draw every single little tiny tree. So I am using those trees to create a variation in value in the mountain. And I'm just putting these little scribbles in darker where there's more trees and lighter where there's less trees. So it gives that the hills a feeling of texture without having to draw 200 little trees. And I can use my blending stump just to soften some edges here and there and help it feel a little bit more like trees instead of scribbles. So with my blending tool, I'm doing a couple little vertical marks, and those are helping emphasize the vertical growth of the trees. I'm going to pull this over a little bit more. It's a little bit too light there. And then we do have these darker trees just in front of the hills. So those I can put in just with little vertical scribbles. And those will be the darkest thing in that background. So the trees are spaced out a little bit more over here. And again, whatever reference you're working from, as the artist, it's your choice as to how you want to represent that image that you're copying. And I don't feel like it's beneficial in this case to put every single little tree that I see on that tree line. So I'm going to edit some out. I do like how they're spaced further apart here, and there's more clumps of trees over on the left side. That gives it some variety compositionally. So I will do more trees over here, just not every single one. There's some little baby trees. And I'm going to run my blending stump over some of those again. I'm not pressing hard at all. I'm just softening a few edges here and there.